All right, welcome everybody to this week's episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, here with Bob Rose. Um, Bob, I titled this show Same Song and Dance because, man, it sure as hell feels like, it's the same song and dance every week. The Saints play a very competitive, close game, but they just can't close the deal because it comes down to about a handful of plays. Um, if they can just get that one reception, if they can just avoid that one holding penalty, you know, um, he made all his kicks to this week, but if they could just make that one field goal, because it's a one scored loss, 6 points. Um, and it felt like as you watch that game, the Patriots made every play they had to make.
Yep.
Even though they got more penalties, they got set back further. They converted a 2nd and 31. It just, it was maddening. And then, we're going to talk a lot about the offense, but I kind of like to start with the defense because I felt, unfortunately, this was the game that all three young players decided to make the rookie mistakes. Sanker got lost. Riley got burned. And Kool-Aid McKinstry just got in bad position. And after bad position, it just kind of steamrolled on him. And we all know this was going to happen, but it sucked that it all happened in the first half of one game. So overall, this defense, how would you grade this? Or is this like you have to grade it based off of two halves?
You definitely have to grade it based off of two halves. But even in the second half, when they finally started to stop the Patriots and we talked about this just before we went on the air, they still couldn't stop New England on 2 or 3 third and longs, especially when they needed them the most.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you about the secondary. In fact, I wrote about this. I put the secondary in my ugly column.
Yeah.
And I said basically what you just did, that you expect a roller coaster with rookies, especially multiple rookies at one position. It's just unfortunate that it all happened in the same week. Not just the secondary, the pass rush couldn't get May to the ground. The run defense I thought played pretty good throughout the game, pretty good throughout most of this season. Certainly an improvement over the toilet heap, the dung heap that we saw, last year. But I look at it this way: Drake May came into the game being sacked 17 times. Saints didn't get to him one official sack, but that's only because Warner beat May to the line of scrimmage, and that was it. Chase Young, Cam Jordan had some nice pressures, couldn't finish plays. You hit the nail on the head with McKinstry, Sanker, and Riley. Reed got caught out of position a couple of times too. Alante Taylor, you take the good with the bad with Alante, and we got both.
Mm-hmm.
For how good that unit played against the Giants. That's how it was the opposite end of the spectrum against the Patriots, and that's the kind of roller coaster ride we expected with that unit. We were just hoping we would see a makeup for that in the pass rush. See an assist from the pass rush. Because pass rush is the defensive back's best friend. Well, should be the defensive back's best friend, and they just aren't getting there. I know Carl Granderson has the sack numbers, but they're coming in short bunches. He doesn't do it consistently. Cam Jordan is not the guy anymore, and Chase Young has never been the guy. All in all, if I'm going to grade the overall performance, I do give it a D from start to finish. A resounding F in the first half, with a C to C minus in the second half.
It sure seemed like when the play broke down and May had to extend the play, that's when the secondary got lost.
Yes.
It's I'm looking at those, thinking about those three touchdowns, and especially the first two. It's like they got caught peeking in the backfield to see what was going to happen, and the receiver got behind them or got around them. They lost track of them, and next thing you know, it's the oh shit moment. That ball comes out, and you can just hear the defensive backs going, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. It's coming my way, and I'm nowhere near this guy. And Sanka did a pirouette out there. He just kind of ran a circle because he had so lost that receiver behind him. And Kenyon Booty got his first 2-touchdown game of his career in that one. To me, if there was a turning point in this game, I think it was after the Saints took that lead when it was 14-16. It was like a minute 50, a minute 51, something like that left in the game. Left in the half, excuse me. And knowing that the Patriots were going to get the ball back in the second half, they just methodically went down the field with big play after big play. And they get a touchdown on it's a tie, goes to the receiver play. Yeah. I mean, McKinstry was in good position. He just was late reacting to it by a half a second. And the receiver was able to get his hands on the ball at the same time McKinstry did. If McKinstry could have reacted a half a second earlier, he probably picks that pass off. But that's the difference. That's how close these windows or how tight these windows are, and May is hitting those windows. Unfortunately, with the Saints, Rattler and our receivers are not hitting those windows and not getting those contested passes. And that was really the difference in the game in the second half, because they only scored one field goal. We only scored one field goal. It was frustrating because you felt like, on the one hand, boy, 6 or 9 points, you just can't overcome that. But on the other hand, you're like, it's only 6 or 9 points. Yeah. One play, one quick strike, one, like what we saw last week with the Giants, one quick pass or deep pass to Rashid Shaheed, and it's a whole new ball game. But it never happened. And every time the Patriots got the ball, and I got to give it to Vrabel, he had a great game plan. He outcoached Kellen Moore Sunday. Yeah. But his plan was, I'm going to boa constrictor that offense. I'm going to squeeze it and control it, and I'm going to use my offense to control the clock so they run out of time trying to get back into this game, because I don't believe their offense can get back in this game. He was right, but I don't believe their offense can get back into this game if they don't have the ball. So it was a masterful game plan from him. So your opinions about the offense. We had talked a little bit before we got on air. We both agree this is probably Rattler's best game as a pro, but he still fell short. It's not all on him, but Drake May made the plays that Rattler in this offense could not. How do you look at this offense? If you want to put the blame on somebody, who or whom do you put the blame on? Because it could be multiple people. Why this offense just cannot seem to get out of its own way and make plays.
Wow, who do I put the blame on? And folks, I know a lot of you want to put the singular blame on, some of you, even Kellen Moore, some Spencer. Yeah, we have two ends of the spectrum with Spencer Rattler, which I know we'll get into in a minute. Some want to blame Juwan Johnson. Some want to blame Chris Olave. Many want to blame Chris Olave. Yeah. Here's the reality, folks. It's everybody. The offensive personnel does not complement one another right now. You have a track team at wide receiver, but a quarterback that's most effective working defenses east to west. You have a quarterback that needs a big physical intermediate target, a Jimmy Graham, a Marcus Colston, a Michael Thomas, but you don't have one on the roster. So do you get a gunslinger quarterback that can sling it all over the field? I mean, yeah, you do have that guy, at least with the physical attributes and Shuck, but is he ready to play? You have an offensive line, who's very good at pass blocking right now. Can't run block consistently to save their lives, so you can't run the ball to protect your young quarterback, whichever guy you go with. It's obviously been Rattler. Two running backs. One Kendre Miller better between the tackles, but you try to run him on pitches, and the other Alvin Kamara best when a play starts off tackle. You got to give him cutback lanes. You're unable to do that. So what do? You run Kamara inside. It's just so you blame the play calling and the game plans to an extent on that. It's just do you see? Alan, I know you see what I mean, but folks, do you see what I mean? I mean, it's a mixing pot of ingredients that don't mesh, don't go together right now, I think is therefore my long-winded answer to the question is it's kind of everybody's fault. Because I mean, you have talented receivers that are not making plays, but you can make a case for the quarterback not always being accurate with ball placement. You have an offense in general that is unable to establish balance because you can't run the ball. Well, part of the reason you can't run the ball is the defense is pinching up, exactly what you said, but you can't make plays deep, even though you got a track team at wide receiver. It's just it's one vicious circle, and I mean we're 6 games in, and I'm exhausted from it.
Well, yeah, I think what you said off the air before we got on, you have a quarterback who specializes in dinking and dunking. He can occasionally make a shot play, but you look at that first play from scrimmage, that 56-yard pass to Olave. It's a little underthrown, so he had to stop to come get it, and that allowed a defensive back to run him down and tackle him. If you had a strong arm quarterback who can hit him in stride, that's a touchdown. We saw that, and this is not calling for Derek Carr to come back. Don't get me wrong.
No,
I'm only talking about in comparison to last year. We saw that with Derek Carr throwing the deep bombs versus Carolina versus Dallas. The deep bomb to Rashid Shaheed hit him in stride for a touchdown. One play, one strike, 80-something yards. We don't have that capability with the quarterback that we have because that's not what he's best at. He's best at short, intermediate passes. He's also, because he's a second-year player, trying to avoid mistakes. He's a low-risk or risk-adverse quarterback, meaning he is not going to try and fit the ball into tight windows. He is going to take what the defense gives him. This is not a negative by any stretch of the imagination. This is what Kellen Moore is coaching him to do, to get him to be an effective quarterback. And you look statistically at this guy, he was 20 or 26 this past week, 102 quarterback rating, something like that. PFF, apparently they were doing cocaine in the bathroom, but they gave him a higher grade than Derek May, so he is executing the offense the way it's supposed to be executed. But like you said, the receivers we have are left over from the previous regime, so they're track receivers designed for a quarterback who throws the ball deep effectively, isn't as good in the short and intermediate passes. So you've got that problem. You've got an offensive line that is a mix mash of pieces that is trying to figure out the identity, but unfortunately inside they've got a couple of weaknesses that get exposed. And that hurts the running game because some are good at pass blocking, some are good at run blocking, some are turnstiles. It's just that's frustrating too, because if you could run the ball effectively, Then Rattler can throw deeper because you now have the safety coming up to meet the running game. So that gives him bigger windows to throw to. So it's a catch-22 across the whole offense. Then your tight end, you have no tight end. You've got a inflated, converted wide receiver who was an undrafted free agent that we paid for some odd reason. I get it. It's because we didn't have anything.
But whose fault is that though? You and I say it every single draft.
Oh, I know. And that's where I was going with this. Adam Trotman aside, because I don't even count the 2020 draft because that's like some kind of COVID-induced fever. I don't even remember how we got to that draft class, but we did. But outside of Jimmy Graham, we have not drafted an impact tight end for this offense in 15 years. 2010 was when Jimmy Graham was drafted. 15 years. We haven't drafted a tight end. And you look at this league, this is a running quarterback league, and it's also you throw to the tight end kind of league because that has become the fullback, what the fullback was in the old NFL. You know, that's who they go to on third down. That's who they go to for the mismatches. And Jimmy Graham was ahead of the curve, admittedly, for that. But, you know, look at Baltimore and the guys they've got with Andrews. I saw Zach Ertz last night. He is still out there, you know. Dallas Goedert, Travis Kelce is still hanging on. I mean, you just go down the list.
Yeah, Laporta, Kittle, Hawkinson, Kincaid up in Dallas. I mean, my God. How much more? And the Saints have faced these guys, and they can't contain them. No. So, I mean, you've learned firsthand what a talented legitimate threat at tight end can do to you, yet you still blatantly ignore it with your team needs.
Hey man, you and I every year we've got tight ends listed in our top 3 picks. You know, this past year it was Warren, you know, Tyler Warren. I've had tight end on my dream list since 2007. You know, I wanted Greg Olsen, they took Robert Meacham. I mean, Mike Meacham paid off, but man, it sure would have been nice to have Greg Olsen on this team, you know. You know, Shockey was here for a while for 3 seasons with one leg, and he still was effective, more effective than any tight end we had since we got rid of Jimmy Graham. You know, Ben Watson, nice piece. Ben Watson, very old. You know, I mean, imagine in 2018, instead of throwing to Dan friggin' Arnold, you're throwing to Jimmy Graham on that first scoring pass. I don't even talk about that game because that is the one Saints game I refuse to watch because I don't need that level of rage in my life anymore. I mean, you know, because I can live with the 2011 playoff loss to the 49ers. It's painful, but I can almost live with that because we took the lead twice.
Yeah. That game makes you want to get drunk. The other game makes you want to commit a murder-suicide.
Right, because that game was stolen from me and stolen from all those players that we keep talking about. Yeah, they need to retire or they need to leave to get a ring. You know, well, Alvin Kamara should have got his friggin' ring in 2018. Same with Cam Jordan. Same with DeMario Davis. All those guys. Drew Brees with his second ring. All those guys deserve that ring because of that game. And getting a tight end that is a real tight end catching passes in 2018, I think we win that game without having to go to Tommy Lee Lewis and hoping for a pass interference call. Imagine you're throwing Jimmy Graham down the seam right there at that point of the game. That game's friggin' over.
Yep.
And they're going to see a pass interference on a big-ass tight end. You know, I mean, just so that's that. So I get it. Juwan Johnson's not a tight end. We need a tight end on this team. Chris Olave is not wide receiver number 1. He's not the X receiver. I've always said he's kind of a in between a Y or what wide receiver 2 and a slot guy. He's in that intermediate area because he's an outstanding route runner, but he's not physical enough to go over the middle. So you're kind of running him more in drag routes and underneath stuff where he can kind of do like what Ted Ginn used to do, catch the ball and curl up in the fetal position at a spot. That's kind of what, but he did. I'm sorry. Yep. That's it. Unless no one was around him, and then he can take off down the field. You look at that Texans game from Monday Night Football in 2019, Breeze hits him right at midfield, and immediately he goes in the fetal position, hits the ground, so he's down to save time. But that's what he did. And that's kind of like how Olave should be playing.
Mm-hmm.
My thing with this entire offense too is it reminds me of bad Saints teams from the standpoint of you're the little boy at the dike and you stick your finger in the hole to plug the hole and 2 more pop up. So now you're sticking in other fingers. Now you become a Tex Avery cartoon. You've got to stretch your hand all the way out here to get that one.
Yep.
Then you got to come down here. Then you got to do this and you got to move all over the place. Tex Avery, for those of you who are not cartoon aficionados, think Tom and Jerry, droopy, eyes bugging out, jaw dropping, that kind of stuff. That's Tex Avery.
Yes.
But yeah, it's frustrating because when's the last time that Kelvin Banks got called for holding? But he gets called for holding on a critical third down. That's a nice strike to Valet. Gets it right on the 4-yard lines, 1st and goal. It's Taysom time. That's a touchdown right there.
Yeah.
But that was 2nd down, so now it's 2nd and 20. And now they can't convert 20 yards to get a 1st down. They have to kick a field goal. So you fix that. But the next time around, it's Chris Olave dropping a perfect pass that hits him in the hands, because he stopped a little. He stuttered before he got it. It's somebody else every time you think you've got it fixed. Someone else makes a mistake, I think there was one play, Penning got beat. And Penning only got beat a couple times, but it was one of those times he got beat. And it disrupted an easy touchdown. I think it was going to go to Rashid Shaheed. It's that kind of stuff. One thing after another, and this offense isn't good enough to overcome those problems. I've been talking a lot. I want to get your thoughts on this.
No, but you're 100% right. And that's why I keep telling people, I'm like, the biggest problem with the Saints right now, because you can't do much about your personnel. But with the personnel that you have, you're still been in position to win 4 of these 5 losses. The reason why they're losing them, I know people want to point to this player or that player, or this position or that position, and you're not wrong. But rarely will you see a team play a perfect game.
No.
Why the Saints are losing is situational football. You're not finishing drive. You're either not sustaining drives, or you're not finishing drives. Many offensively because of the reasons that you just mentioned. A drop pass here, an inaccurate throw there. Getting nailed for a 4-yard, 5-yard loss on 1st down, or a holding penalty. You're behind and down in distance, and you don't have the combination of personnel, execution, and play calling to make up for it. Defensively, you can't get off the goddamn field on 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 17. You're not getting to the quarterback in key moments. On a 3rd and 4, you're giving up a 5-yard run, a 4.5-yard run. You have to get off the field in those situations. So again, special team. We know the issues with special teams this year. Even though, like you said, Groupie had a groupie game finally, but kick coverage still poor, punting still poor. It's situational football. And that's why when a bad team is a bad team, it's because they fail in situational football. And that's what's happening with the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, and so people will say, well, Rattler played a good game overall. He did play a good game overall. Chris Olave had 98 yards receiving. That is a good game overall. But we're all going to hyper focus on these one or two plays that are the difference in the game. Juwan Johnson only saw two targets the entire game. One of them is the one he fumbled.
Which wasn't a fumble, by the way.
I don't believe it was a fumble either.
If it's close enough against the Saints, the ref was going to call it. And and listen, but I'm not calling. I've called a lot of officials or officiating crews corrupt. I'm not going to call this one corrupt. I'm going to call this one blatantly incompetent, because the Patriots were screwed on a lot of calls too. The Olave drop you talked about in the first, and one of the Olave drops you talked about, that was a catch, and of it, you don't get to be more of a catch than that. But it was also a fumble. So in a way, the Saints dodged a bullet on that one. Yeah. And again, I know people like to point to officiating too, and I'm certainly one of them. No, officiating did not cost the Saints this game. I work with a kid at Jared. He's a Patriots fan, and I saw him today for the first time since Sunday. Or since before the game, and he said, so he goes, how much did the Saints try to pay the refs to try to win that game? And I instantly blurted back to him, like, the same amount that the Patriots paid, and both teams need to ask for a refund because they got screwed.
Well, and I kept saying to the whole game, this is what happens when a 1-5 team or 1-4 team is playing a 2-3 team. I mean, this is the level of officiating you're going to get. Because the offensive pass interference on Diggs, marginal. The no call when Riley grabs, I don't remember who the receiver is, but on the very next play, he grabs him to prevent him from getting the ball. That should have been pass interference, and it wasn't. But, at the same time, that's not a fumble. Even though the ball is dislodged, he doesn't lose control of the fumble until after his knee hits the ground. And the call on the field was a completed catch. The beanbag did not come out.
Right.
So is that indisputable evidence? Now, I know that, CBS goes to the clown in the booth, who I never liked him even as an official. I like Mike Pereira a lot better. I thought this guy was a terrible official when he was out there. Oh, yeah, see, this is clearly a fumble. If we slow this down to 1 frame per second, I'm like, I hear you, Zapruder. Let's look at the JFK assassination this way. Back and to the left, back and to the left. That's what it felt like as they're slowing this down to show that the ball is dislodged and moving. And because it's moving, I'm going to rule this a fumble. Your ass, you're ruling that a fumble. If that was Tom Brady, you're not ruling that a fumble. Because I already lived through that shit. Yeah, I've already lived through that.
And the one New England offensive PI that the bullshit PI, that nullified their one long touchdown. I was up screaming because I agree with you. It should not have been offensive pass interference, but the Patriots still should have been flagged because Chase Young literally got tackled. While rushing the quarterback, and I'm already yelling and screaming. I'm like, "Where's the effing flag for holding?" And this and that and everything. And then I see the flag, and I sat down. I'm like, "Okay." And then they say offensive pass interference. I'm like, what? I'll take it, but what?
Right. Oh, and then every time he threw the bubble screen to his receiver or to a back, number 3 only knew one way to block. That is to hold. And not, I'm going to hold you in front of the jersey. I'm holding you on the shoulder pads because you're too big. And he's holding Alontae Taylor. I'm like going, holy shit, that's like classic holding. And you're just looking right at it. Meanwhile, they call holding, and again, this is really exposing the incompetence of this officiating crew, because I'm going to go both ways on this. But they call holding on Banks on a legal block, but because the guy lost his footing, Banks is now holding him as he's falling to the ground. And those officials are key to say, okay, if the guy falls down on that kind of block, it's a hold. Had he held him upright and dragged him across, they wouldn't have called holding, which is unbelievable. But that's how these officials think. If you just keep the guy held upright and drag his feet around the corner, you're not holding by the rules. They just are looking to see if the guy hits the ground. And, so that valet reception doesn't count. I just, because I've always said that play should always be flagged for holding, regardless who's doing it. Because the minute you have the guy's neck up like this, that's a hold. I'm sorry, you're beaten. That's a hold. You were holding that guy, because we all remember back in, 2013, I think it was, against Tom Brady and the Patriots, the game-winning touchdown. The belt boy, I just drew a blank on his name, but number 93.
The psych patient formerly known as Junior Galette.
Junior Galette, thank you. Is coming around the corner. He is going to kill Tom Brady. You hear me? Tom Brady is not going to survive this hit because he is at a high rate of speed. So his tackle, who got beaten, gets him in that headlock. He's got Galette bent almost in half like friggin' Gumby. His arm is out here like this to go, official, Mr. Official, do you see how he's holding me? And they go, oh, no, legal. That's touchdown, game over. Get the hell out of here. And so that's how these calls have just been terrible from start to finish like that, So, I remember those things. Those things stick with me.
Same. Yeah.
That. Jerry Rice fumbling the ball before he crossed the line of scrimmage. And every time a player does it, I go, oh, you mean like Jerry Rice did in 1989 versus the Saints in September? Yeah, I remember that game in the damn dome, and he punched the logo on the wall because he knew he fumbled, but they called it a touchdown anyway. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just going off now. But, but yeah, I mean, so that's why I know that rule. I know that rule so well because it was not called. And then Vern Lundquist and Terry Bradshaw have to remind me of that when they show the replay. Oh, look, he fumbled before he crossed the line. But because it's Jerry Rice and the 49ers, we don't get the call. So, yeah, officiating and screwing the Saints is just an annual tradition we get to relive every fall. What would you say? This is a hell of a loaded question. What would you say, though, that they do right now? I know that's a tough one, but
because as a whole, they battle, and I love the fight in this team. With the exception of the Seattle game, which they
that's my niece. She says, my dad is trying to example the holding call to me. Oh, yeah, I bet that's good. Just don't ask him to show you how he drove blocked somebody in our apartment. He tried to drive block my friend John, and we used to keep a key in the lock because it was a deadbolt lock. We kept the key in the lock. He drove my friend John into the front door and snapped the key off in the lock, and we were locked in. I had to go get a pair of tweezers. Thank God we had some. Don't ask me why we had tweezers, but it's a guy's apartment. We had a set. And I was able to just carefully pull the key out of the lock so we could get the hell out of there. But yeah, that was that story. But yeah, go ahead. What you're saying? I'm sorry. I just that story was funny.
Oh no, that's all right. I just this team. One of our followers, and I won't mention him by name because I don't want this to seem like it's meant out of disrespect, because it's not. He when I talked about how well I thought Rattler performed, with the Spencer Rattler bar, which will forever hereafter have. There's the quarterback bar, the average quarterback bar, and then the Spencer Rattler bar. But anyway, in my article, I talked about how Spencer Rattler was one of the Saints standouts. And he took umbrage to that. And I mean, it was a civil disagreement. you and I have had them many times.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Bob, I don't know what game you were watching. Rattler this, Rattler that, and I'm like,
I've gotten that.
Yeah, and he did it very respectfully. So I came back and I said, well, I was watching the same game you were, and I stand by my analysis. And by the way, I watch every Saints game live, and then for my articles and analysis, I rewatch them, no matter how bad it is. I rewatch it twice, and I stand by my analysis. And and then he said, basically it was okay. We respectfully disagree. I see your points, but, and I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Then I said, and he said, my condolences for having to rewatch that. And I replied back. I said, well, I appreciate that. I said, but I will take rewatching any of this year's losses, Seattle game notwithstanding, to watching any of the Dennis Allen games throughout the last 3 years, because I see more fight in this team, more battle to this team than at any point in time under Dennis Allen. So if you're asking me what the team consistently does well week in and week out, they fight. And if you fight, if you stay aggressive, and if you go 100 miles an hour, things are going to start turning your way. Now this is a big if you learn from your mistakes. Now we're in week 7 now, it's time to start showing that you've learned from those mistakes.
And I'm glad you said that, because that's pretty much where I was going to go with this. I think that this team shows incredible fight and incredible spunk, and that's a credit to Dennis Allen, credit to Kellen Moore. That this team does not, even though it seems that they get a friggin' hangnail, that's enough to set the offense back. And here's the thing too. I want to add this. Oh man. Listen, he wanted to show that he was more powerful than my friend John, who was a big guy. So he took that big flat ass of his and those big foot feet and just drove him into the front door. So it was actually rather amusing.
Genevieve, there's not a male on the face of the earth at that age that is very bright. For my first 4 apartments, and again, all single guys living together, anywhere from 2 to 6, 6 going back to college. We never had a coffee table, because we would buy one, and then a wrestling pay-per-view would come on, and we would reenact the pay-per-views, and someone or more than someone would inevitably crash through the coffee table. So, as a collective group at that age range, none of us are very bright.
Well, we had an interesting college experience. That's all I can say. I'm so glad, these
you lived through it.
Didn't exist.
Right.
No, these things didn't exist. There's no evidence. You can't say that I did this. None of that exists. So thank you. All it does is become more entertaining stories. The older we get, the more entertaining the story becomes. But no, I was going to say, the fight this team shows, and that's part of the reason why this team keeps losing these close games, is because they fight. Even in that Seattle debacle, there was fight at the end. They were still trying to at least score a touchdown, to not be humiliated, and that's really the only game that they look totally outclassed from beginning to end.
Yeah.
All the rest of them, I think that's what drives a lot of the frustrations, because people feel like these are games that we should win, and we're not. We're close, and it's not happening, and we can't figure out why it's not happening, because it should happen. We should get these games. And so, when I'm looking at this team, I'm not expecting to win, but I'm expecting them to correct the mistakes and then show me what you can do now that you learned from the mistakes you made. And I think Spencer Rattler, ironically, is the guy on this team that is the best example, showing you he's learning from his mistakes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Fully agree with that.
Yeah, we were critical of him for not pushing the ball downfield. Well, he's pushing the ball downfield now. it's not perfect, obviously, but he is pushing the ball downfield. I think he throws to Olave too much for somebody
Yeah.
who doesn't have consistent hands. You need to start throwing to other people. I need to see Valet out there a lot more.
Oh, please. And again, that's not on Rattler. That's coaching.
Yeah. And I need to see Valet now maybe play the X a few times so he's the primary target instead of playing the slot. If we're going to try a shot play, maybe throw to Rashid Shaheed instead of Chris Olave. We got one pass to Cooks, Brandon Cooks. I don't know if Brandon Cooks can run or not anymore. I mean, we just haven't seen it.
That's fair.
Show me some stuff with him. Run some plays designed for Brandon Cooks to get his speed out there. I just haven't seen it. I don't know what's going on out there. It just feels like offensively, even though Rattler's growing, he just targets the same people over and over and over with the occasional bone thrown to Valet, the occasional bone thrown to Cooks or Morrow. Where was Taysom Hill? Taysom Hill only showed up in that first quarter.
Yeah.
But they never put him out as wide receiver, never tried to throw him the ball.
Nope.
Nothing like that. I mean, get different personnel out there and have Rattler have the offense design with these different personnel as primary target. That's the issue. If Rattler's making one read and get rid of it, make him the primary target, That's the part that's bugging me.
And it bugs me too. And I'm trying to catch myself by realizing, okay, this is also a new coaching staff. Now they're not new to football, but they're new to this particular personnel grouping. Kellen Moore is brand new to being a head coach. Folks are, I know he's calling the offenses still. The offense is his baby, which is fine. But any coach will tell you that when you move from assistant to head coach, there is just so much more going on, that you have to deal with simultaneously. So I'm waiting for the coaches to learn from their mistakes as well, both in game plan setups and play calling / adjustments. Because I mentioned this last week. Kamara only had 4 against the Giants. Kamara had 4 catches for 28 yards, and 2 drops. But I like even though the numbers weren't there, I like the type of routes that they're starting to use Kamara on. Well, against the Patriots, we saw Kamara lined up at wide receiver by my count 4 times. He only got the ball twice, but that's the first time I've seen Kamara lined up as a legitimate wideout in years. Yeah. So, I mean, they're starting to feel things out. I just want to see results from these. If you're going to use a boxing analogy, you're feeling a guy out. You're seeing what works against him, what doesn't work against him. But it's a 12-round fight, or in the case of the NFL, it's a 17-week fight. And by midway through the fight, you better have figured out what works and what doesn't. And we're nearing that midway point right now. Yeah,
we are. And, as usual, the topic becomes, if we're not going to win, if we're not winning, and we're still struggling to score touchdowns, do you make the switch at some point just to change things up? I mean, we're already demanding that they change receivers up. We're already demanding that they, make decisions about how often we're going to put, say, Juwan Johnson out there versus, Stutzman, 2 on defense, but Juwan Johnson versus maybe putting Foster Moreau out there more, maybe putting Jack Stoll out there more, that kind of stuff. And I'm not expecting massive changes, but I think, you have to start figuring out, okay, this isn't working. So we need to get somebody out there who is going to start making this work. And if we can't push the ball down the field or have a quick strike capability, which was driving me nuts in the third and fourth quarter, is that we had no quick strike capabilities. We weren't even trying to score quickly to get back into the game, to change the way the game was being played. Then you have to make a change. And I think if you're going to make that change, it's not from the standpoint of Rattler, you suck, you go to the bench, or
Right.
Olave, you suck, you go to the bench. It's more of we're going to start changing things up to try and generate some offense, to try and do something. I think if you're going to make that change now, you have to wait until the bye week in week 11. And if we're 1-11 at that point, or 1-10 at that point, then you're fully justified in doing that. Because after the Bears it's Tampa, who's probably playing the best football out there right now, and I'm talking about in the entire NFL.
Yeah, the luckiest team I've ever seen. But
yes, they are. But I mean, all the powerhouses suck. The Eagles suck. The Bills stink. I mean, I was watching that 3 weeks in a row, going back to when they played us. They were terrible. They're waiting for Josh Allen to put the Mighty Mouse costume on, and here I come to save the day. Washington's not very good. Just go down the list. Detroit lost again.
Yeah.
And got pretty dominated by the Chiefs. The Chargers are falling. The Ravens stink. Injuries are happening with that. Oh, speaking of which, I don't know if you saw this or not. So the Texans release, and Texans aren't good either, but the Texans release our favorite player, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He signs with the Ravens, I think, last week. Now the Ravens are injured to hell. He's on the practice squad. They make a trade last week with the was it with the Chargers? I think it was with the Chargers to get a starting safety. Today it came out by mutual agreement. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson got released. What the hell is going on?
You know what's going on because Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He's a problem. He's a problem child. I've called him, and I've wanted to put this in writing so bad. And thus far, I've avoided the temptation. We poke fun at the psych patient formerly known as Junior Gillette. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is pocket Junior Gillette. He has those kind of psychological problems, and frankly has since college. Everybody wanted to know why a player so talented dropped to the 4th round. That's why. His teammates can't stand him. His coaches can't stand him. A wonderful, wonderful player. Talent-wise, a great agitator. If you're gonna, for you hockey fans, every team needs an agitator, someone who just get under the skin of everybody. Now, unfortunately, some agitators will get under the skin of your own people too, and that's Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That's why he's not been able to stay anywhere. It's not that he's not talented. It's not that he doesn't make big plays, and he'll give you all he has physically when he's on the field. But they can't stand is that he's a jackass. That's why nobody wants Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
It's funny because, when he was with the Saints, we all said, man, I love that he's on our team, but he would piss me off like nobody's business if he was on, if I had to play against him. The famous, what was it? Because we have the Bears coming up, and that's the other reason why I brought him up. The famous Bears game with the mouthpiece and Wims. And he got Wims so pissed off, he took a swing at him. He went and hunted him down. Wasn't even like a regular play. Went and hunted him down and took a swing at him in front of an official. Well, he got ejected. Getting in front of Tom Brady, all 5 feet of him, standing in front of Tom Brady with his arms folded, looking up at him like, yeah, we picked it off. We ran it back for a touchdown. And what? And then, or the Falcons game where he does the, Karate Kid move and just kicks the shit out of that logo on the wall in the corner of the end zone. I mean, as Saints fans, you love that from your player, but you can see how that would piss other people off. And I guess that act just wears thin with people. And the Saints locker room of 2018 and 2019 could handle him because you had enough people. You had a Malcolm Brown. You had a I just drew a blank on his name, number 27.
Jenkins.
Malcolm Jenkins.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Malcolm Jenkins. You had Drew Brees. You had Demario Davis, Cam Jordan. You know, you had enough personalities in there that could keep him under wraps. Now, he pissed off Michael Thomas, and they got into an altercation in practice, but still, he, as a whole, you can control him. I think when he gets in these other teams, they don't have that kind of locker room. They don't have those kind of older veterans. He's now the older veteran.
Yeah.
And that's not sitting well. And that's when he runs into problems. And he's gotten paid. He got paid a lot from the Texans. The Eagles paid him. And like you said, he can play. But you just have to deal with this ball of knives, is the best way I could put it, you know, of a personality that you just have to realize he's going to run his mouth and he is going to drive people crazy. He's going to piss people off. And he's going to be, for lack of a better term, the asshole in the locker room. You just have to be able to shut him down with strong personalities. Bob, last two things before I know you got to leave early tonight. But last two things. Dennis Allen next week or this Sunday in Soldier Field. Revenge game for Kendre Miller, but I think it's also for those defensive players like Cam Jordan and Demario Davis and everybody who was there this past year. They'd love to put an L and hang a lot of points in that defense. Do you think that can happen?
No.
I know.
No, because we haven't seen it yet. Now, I on my radio show on Monday, I was asked what my early analysis was on the Bears, and I kind of chuckled when I said, well, let's start defensively, and I said, tell me if you haven't heard this, this playbill before. You have a defense, a secondary that makes a lot of plays, but gives up the big play in key moments. A pass rush that will put up sacks and bunches, but cannot pressure the passer when they need the most. And a defense that cannot stop the run altogether, ever. That's the Chicago Bears defense, coordinated by Dennis Allen. But I mean, can the Saints put up a lot of points on them? They haven't yet. They've scored over 21 points one time in Spencer Rattler's 13 games, the 12 starts plus the Washington game. One time. That was it. Yeah.
We can't count the Giants game because that was a defensive touchdown. So,
exactly. So I mean, if they haven't done it yet, why? What reason do we have to believe that it's going to start now? I would love for it to happen, but for all the reasons why we spent most of tonight talking about, it's just hard to believe we would see it happen. I would love nothing more than for it to start to happen this week. Can the Saints defenders, kind of rub it in the nose of their former coach, their former coordinator? Again, I would love for it to happen, but what do you have? What are you going up against? A very athletic quarterback in Caleb Williams, the very thing that you cannot stop. A very talented duo of receivers in Adunze and Moore, along with Luther Burden, who's finally finding his way. How's that young secondary going to respond? I don't see this. Are the Bears a beatable team? Yeah. Are they a good team? No. But I don't like the way this Bears team matches up with this Saints team. If I had to make my prediction, not at this point.
Yeah, not at this point, because I mean the Bears are coming off of a short week. But they had a really big emotional win versus Washington, who is a good team. Granted, the receiver, the quarterback's been hurt, but yeah, it's like Calvin's saying, stop giving up 14 points the first two drives of every game. Stop letting the first half happen where the team gets so far ahead that you just now are trying to dig out of a hole. You need to start scoring 14 points and get up on that defense early. And I don't know if that's going to happen. It would be nice if it does. And I think if they could get up on them by a couple of scores, a couple of legitimate scores, that then Kendre Miller can get turned loose and he's going to be physical, and the defense will start going after the quarterback and making things happen, that kind of stuff. But, it's just you got to be a quick starting team, and we just haven't been. We get down there, we get down to the 20, get in the red zone, and then it all falls apart. And he's right. Calvin's right again. Score 7 for a change. Don't kick field goals. Yeah. Hell, I'm like, get over 50% on third down conversions. Do that, all the little things. And something I didn't say earlier, but is very true. The Saints in the past under Sean Payton and Drew Brees at their peak, 3rd and 13, 3rd and 17 didn't matter. 3rd and 17, we're going to throw an 18-yard screen pass to Pierre Thomas. Pierre Thomas is going to fight for the last 11 yards and get the first down. That just, we don't have that right now, and that's what's hurting us.
Yep.
Bob, what do you have coming up on the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night?
Nothing. We get the day off tomorrow. Okay. Brendan is on the road. We are going to try to put together a show for Friday. But stay tuned for that. I will let you folks know. As always, I'll post what we're going to do and when we're going to do it on my social media pages, including the Under the Dome Facebook group. So stay tuned for that. So no, you guys don't have to see my fugly face Wednesday. I'll give you at least a couple days reprieve on that one. Okay.
Well, yes, let us know if there's anything going on with the Bayou Blitz this week. I was going to ask you the last question if, you have a prediction for a score, but it's really no point in doing it because it's, to me, it's going to be a close game again. And depending on if you can get turnovers or not, depends on whether we're going to win the game. I don't think it'll be a blowout because I just don't think we play those kind of games. But it's going to be a tough challenge because you have Tampa coming up the following week and then the Rams, who, Puka Nacua is hurt, but our luck, he's going to be healthy by the time that game rolls around, and I do not want to see Puka Nacua running through that secondary because that's a nightmare.
I don't want to see him.
A good secondary.
Right. I don't want to see him. I don't want to see Emeka Egbuka. The next couple games could get ugly. The Saints need to come away with a W on this one. But I don't like the matchup.
I forgot to even ask you about this. I was going to ask you on the air, but quick prediction. Do you think the Saints make any trades? Is there going to be any kind of movement for any of the veteran players?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be Alvin Kamara, and I'm pretty positive it's not going to be Demario Davis or Cam Jordan. I do believe it could and should be Chris Olave. Not that I don't really like Olave as a player, I do, but we talked about how he's not a number one receiver. Well, folks, consider this. They picked up his fifth-year option, the Saints did already, which means if he's on the roster in 2026, Olave's cap hit will go from $6.2 million to $15.5 million. That's pretty damn close to wide receiver one money. And during his contract extension, people are saying he's asking for $30 million. I highly doubt that, but he's probably asking for at least 20. He's not a $20 million a year player. You need to move on from him now. And I think that's the one piece on your roster. If you get a team that thinks they're a wide receiver needy team, a Bills, a Chiefs, a 49ers, you might be able to get a third and a day 3 pick for Olave. I know that's stretching it a little bit, but it depends on Depends on what other wide receivers are on that market. Because Olave could come into one of those teams and not be expected to be a wide receiver, a featured weapon like he is with the Saints, but a complementary weapon. And that's where Chris Olave is at his best. The other two names I'm watching, you're not going to get as much in return for. Carl Granderson. 49ers are really banged up at edge rusher and linebacker, which Pete Werner too. Now, Pete Werner, you might get a bag of Pez for, Granderson again. You look at the cap number; it goes from $6.5 million this year to $18 million next year. That's featured pass rusher money. He ain't a featured pass rusher. I could see a team like the Bills wanting to add to a pass rush, the Chiefs, the Redskins, the 49ers. Bosa is out for the year. So, maybe you get a couple conditional day 3 picks for a Granderson. Yeah, the three names I'm watching are Olave, Granderson, and Werner. And if they're not going to move Olave, they might move Shaheed, but I don't think you get as much for Rashid.
Yeah, the Steelers are calling about Shaheed. That was one name I've seen, and I don't think you can get as much for him. And I don't think the Saints really want to move him. I think they're going to pay anybody. They're going to want to pay Shaheed.
Agreed.
Because he's a kick returner and a speed threat.
Mm-hmm.
They can draft a physical player at the X and still use Shaheed. So
exactly.
I want to get your thoughts on those before we went off the air. I know I held you 5 minutes longer than I should have, but I appreciate you for those thoughts. That's exactly how I feel. Werner to the 49ers. I'm just throwing it out there. I think that's a very realistic possibility. There's your door opening for Stutzman to come in. Mm-hmm. I saw Stutzman and Stallbird in a lot of packages this past week. That's something to watch this Sunday to see if you see those guys in there more. I think that's also true for if they move Olave. Let's see if we start seeing some of the other receivers coming in and playing more, kind of pulling Olave back a little bit, because I think they've been showcasing him to try and drum up some interest to get rid of him. So thanks, guys, for sticking with us all this time. Thank you, Bob. I know you got a busy day tomorrow, but in the meantime, we'll see you next time under the dome. Good night, everybody.
Night.